Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to episode number 9 of Project LS400. The last episode ended with quite a bit of a bummer with the fuel system leaking because I didn't test it once I installed it, so I had the whole shebang back on as it is now. And then I realized I didn't test the fuel system under pressures and everything was leaking. I made a mistake of using copper washes. I think that was the mistake. So I took the whole shebang out again, removed the fuel rails, installed new aluminum washers I bought, then tested it before I put on the plenum and all. Everything was tight. I could still hear a noise, but I later realized it was a pressure regulator opening, and you hear the return flow make some noise, and there was some air had to bleed out. Anyways, after I recorded the last scene of the previous episode, I immediately started working on the car again, so corrected my mistake, tested it, everything is tight, nothing's leaking, put the whole shebang back on, and now we're ready to go further. And the next thing to do is to install the new timing belt. I decided to do this a bit different than I have done in the previous episodes, namely by using movie magic. So I won't go into detail as much, at least not for the removal. It's self-explanatory. You just unscrew things and pull them off and throw the old timing belt off and the idlers and all. So let's go ahead. I hope you'll enjoy this episode. So timing belt fun for this episode it is. So I reinstalled my bearing puller. I rotated the camshafts a few times during the inspection of the valve lash, so I reset the timing, the crankshaft pulley to 0 degrees, top dead center first cylinder, and then these aligned, the camshaft sprockets aligned with the, here it is, with the timing marks. So now I'll have to pull off the pulley again, and then I start removing all the stuff in front of the engine. So I have the timing belt off. I just got it, removed the idler pulley and the tensioner pulley. Now it's time to wiggle off the water pump. And when I took off the bolts, here's one bolt. See, the camera will focus. There's this black marking that indicates there was a silicone gasket maker was used, so the water pump has been replaced before. Oh, not too shabby, if I'd say so myself. The only thing that's holding it back, not sure if it shows on the camera, it does, is this bolt here. Oh, it's a nut actually. And then it should just simply slide up, which it does. Oh, see a whole lot of gasket maker there. Let's give it a whirl. It doesn't sound too bad. Actually, there's nothing wrong with this pump, but I'm not sure how long it's been on there. So you can see the heavy amount of corrosion forming here. So, got that out of the way. So basically we're ready now to reinstall the timing belt, but not before I cleaned up a bit here. And easily pull off the camshaft sprocket, clean it out a bit, clean behind it. Also, here's the idler pulley. You can hear it run into my gloves a bit, but you can also hear the bearing make some noise. And this is the tensioner pulley. It also makes a slight noise. At this moment it's not too worrying, but if the idler pulley makes a noise and this is starting to make some noise, always a good time to replace them. Now, will you look at that? Doesn't that look nice and clean? Yeah, I know I still have to remove this black gasket, but I forgot my gasket scraper. But look down there. It was a muddy mess. That also goes for the upper sump. This part, the lower sump, the steel one is down there. But something has leaked. I'm not sure it was this seal. It looks factory to me, so I don't think that one leaked, but it was messy. I assume one of the lines in front must have leaked, and this one could also be the culprit, because the, what do you call it, the snap ring around here, the Jubilee clip, this line there was not too tight. Anywho, I used some turpentine in a drinking glass, and I have a brush here. Well, I cut off the hairs, and I cleaned up the whole bits, and came out really nice, really clean. This is the original cover that goes on here, that holds the tensioner for the timing belt and the crankshaft position sensor. That was never replaced. There's no need to. The water pump has been replaced, as I showed you in the previous clip. So that's that. But now that the front end is off, you can actually see how compact this V8 actually is. Okay, still a 4-liter V8, which is a large engine for European standards. But from there to there, it's actually not longer than an inline 4. And I would say it's even shorter than an inline 6. So it's really clever engineering. And all the amount of engineering is still impressive to this date. So just wanted to show you that. I just finished cleaning up the mating surfaces for the water pump and the water pump gasket. And I hear think, hey, what gasket? Well, yes, indeed. This kit came with a very nice metal multi-layered gasket with a incorporated sealing line around it. It's very nice. Comes from a Gates kit. I'll show you. This is the timing belt kit. There's an article number KP1T298. This kit comes with it's a complete kit. It has a water pump, the gasket I showed, the timing belt, and the idler and tensioner pulley. Kit also comes with a new rubber seals, go on this water pipe and on the outlet for the thermostat, and it comes with this bag of new bolts. I think it's a really nice kit, and I'm happy I have this. Well, there it is. Okay. It's always great putting new stuff on. You can really see there's something done. Getting somewhere. You know, always be careful to first slightly tighten the bolts, that the mating surfaces touch at the same time, so you don't warp the housing. It's very thin. Almost forgot. I always mark off the bolts I've tightened for future reference, so that I'm sure, and the next guy is sure, that I only wish I had brought my white marker, because it's metallic color. It's almost invisible. I've cleaned the tensioner and the bolts, the bolts that go in the idler pulley and the pivoting point of the tensioner pulley. You have to compress the protruding part, but you really need the vise to do that. I believe the workshop manual says I have to apply about 10,000 newtons, which is the weight of a full-sized car. So I used someone else's large vise, compressed it, and then stuck this small Allen key in. And I got hold of some Loctite. You have to put some thread sealant, securing agent on the back of those threads. So, toss them in. Just a small dab. When it come out, it's a drop. It's more than enough. And before I do, so before using any thread sealant, it's always important to clean the threads with some brake clean. Just to make sure that no grease gets mixed into the thread sealant. And that does it. When I clean the pivoting point of this idler pulley, put in some clean grease. Don't forget to put the back washer on. Also serves as a spacer. Oops, tiny lot. Well, okay, that does it. It's tight enough. I don't have a suitable torque wrench, so this will have to do. Next thing to do is to find the bolts that hold the tensioner. Put it back on. I try to be careful not to loosen or not to lose any bolts and keep the things together. But when I, for example, got this crankshaft position sensor out, I must have put a bolt somewhere else. I couldn't find it, so I'll just use a new one. But on a positive note, I didn't lose my 10mm socket yet. I really don't like how this sits. There's a lot of wiggle room in here. No, it's not. But there's a fairly big hole. And the sensor body itself is resting on the... Try to show you. This is the sensor, and there's a lot of space over here. And it rests on this edge. There you go. See? I'd rather have it more centered, but you can't rotate it. There's no adjustment here, so I have to assume this is the way it should go. Now the main theme is to work as clean as possible. I've been doing a lot of work and a lot of debris got caught in these camshaft pulleys, so I use compressed air to blow it out. Use a small amount of brake clean to clean the back of those pulleys. They've been covered in some, what do you call it, a sort of grease to prevent it from rusting and oxidizing when it's in storage, where they don't need to be lubricated on the outside. Perhaps the oil or the grease, they get caught in the backside of the new timing belt. Oh, did you hear that? That's how brittle these casings are. Anywho, let's get the oh, we got a crank, the water pump pulley. After that, let's pull out the new timing belt. Also a good time for me to check the movement of this. Rotates freely. So let's say we're ready to throw the new timing belt in. Got the new timing belt out. There are some markings on here. Let me focus the camera. It says left, right. Both of those are the marks for the camshafts. And here it says CR, meaning crankshaft. Alrighty. It should be on the lower side. It's hard to see from here, but just put it in something like this and see where we end up. Put it in loosely. Now the first most important part is the marking on the crankshaft. And what I'm going to do is make a small marking with my lacquer marker. Just make a small marking here where the mark on the crankshaft should be. It's a small O, it's not visible from here. There's a U-shaped marking on top of this pulley. It doesn't have to be in place yet. Work right over here. Next up is the trigger plate for the camshaft position sensor. Goes on here. Then comes a timing cover, which we have over here. Seems I've lost another bolt. Darn. Are you? Why do I keep losing my tools all the time? Alrighty. Good thing I have a boatload of these 10mm bolts at hand, or at least they're not 10mm, they are 6mm. Grab, but it won't, and now it will, yeah. Alright, next up is the crankshaft pulley for the serpentine belt. Slides in easily. So with all these covers and the timing belt around these tensioner and idler pulley, there's no way it can move or jump a tooth on the camshaft sprocket. So in theory I could now tighten the crankshaft pulley bolt, because when everything is alright I don't need to pull this entire lot off again. So let's grab my special tool and my torque wrench and tighten it up. Oi, almost knocked off the radiator grill. Alright, now let's get my mighty torque wrench. The workshop manual says it should be tightened to 245 Newton meters. It's a bit out of scale of my torque wrench, but I think I have a good feel for that. That should do it. Pretty sure it's more tightened than it was before. So let's put the pulley back on its timing mark. Remove my special tool. It served me well. Let's go ahead with setting the timing of the camshaft sprockets. So I went ahead and I put the first part on. This is aligned with the timing marks. Then you go from here underneath the water pump pulley up to here. Timing marks are also aligned both on the sprocket, on the belt and on the engine block. Problem I have now is that there's too much tension here that I have to push it on, and I'll have to push the teeth of the timing belt past the sprocket, which might damage them. So I think it would be wise to remove the tensioner temporarily to get a bit more wiggle room, and then install the tensioner again. I'm not even sure that the workshop manual stated that I should already have put the tensioner in. I'll look it up for you. Gives me a whole lot of wiggle room, and then see, it goes on ever so gently. So check, check, double check. That's on its timing mark. Looks like it's slightly off to the left, but it isn't. There you can see the timing mark on the sprocket, on the belt, on the engine. And over there it's the same. So now I can put the tensioner back in and pull this poor Allen key out, and then it will tension the entire timing belt. And then we should be ready for an engine start. But I guess I have to wait some time before we can start the engine. The last few bits still aren't in. There's another thing I wanted to address. That's the power steering pump. It would be a great time now to remove the pump and to install a new seal kit. Only problem is it'll take months before I have that seal kit. And when I don't do it now, it's the only reasonably accessible part of this engine. So if I can get hold of a sealing kit for the power steering pump on a later time, it'll be fairly easy to pull it out. So I'll leave it for now, although I rather would have refurbished it now. It shows some signs of leakage, but since there are no leaking marks on the alternator, I think these are fairly old leaking marks. Not fresh leaking marks anyway. The only thing left to do is to pull my Allen key out, see what happens. smacked a hole in the radiator, but darn. So everything is in place. So the next step is to rotate the crankshaft twice and check if the timing marks are still aligned. But before I do that, it's been quite some time that I had the valve covers off, and I lubricated the camshafts and the buckets and all when I reinstall them, but it's been quite some time. So what I'll do next is squirt some oil on everything. I can do that because the spark plug seals still haven't arrived, so all of this is open, so it gives me some space to squirt in some oil. So that's that. Okay, let's see where we're at. 2 full rotations it is. That's 1. And that's 2. Aligned, aligned, and aligned. Job well done, Arnold. Now, since the engine doesn't have to be rotated anymore, at least not for adjustment activities under the hood, I think it's a good time to install the spark plugs, which I have here. I'll use a small amount of anti-seizure compound, in fact copper grease. It's a small deviation from the advised or recommended anti-seize, but I can't get hold of nickel anti-seize, and I also couldn't get hold of the platinum iridium tipped spark plugs, so I went with the Denso K20 TT spark plugs. Yeah, there we are, Denso K20 TT, but they are recommended in the workshop manual as the standard option for spark plugs. They only require a shorter replacement interval. So what I'll do is toss some copper grease on all of them and then slide them in. I had some paper towels in there, but it's fairly moist in here. The air humidity is quite high, so I thought it would be a good idea to install the spark plugs to seal off the cylinders. Let's see. So much better. And all of a sudden, we're a few hours later, and I was in the process of installing the fan bracket and the thermostat, and I took a closer look here. And I mentioned the power steering pump, which I hadn't planned to take off, but I think I have to do that anyway, because I saw there was a lot of power steering fluid coming out of here. So the seal inside, that's the seal behind the bearing, is probably leaking, but also behind here there was a small, there weren't drips on there, but it was, you could see it slowly seeping out. And I already concluded that it wasn't leaking onto the alternator. I'd rather be driving through the Alps this summer with a reliable LS400 instead of being stranded somewhere halfway in Germany in some workshop because my alternator stopped because my power steering pump was leaking. So I'll take that out anyway, but first up I'll install the fan bracket and the thermostat housing. So when I took the water pump off the old water pump, I figured it was replaced once before because of the seals here, but then I found this number. You see, 94. It's the build year of the car, so this is the original water pump. And honestly, it's still good, but had a new one, and while we're at it, just tossed a new one in. So, fun little fact. And all of a sudden the timing belt and all the covers and brackets and stuff are in. I put the fan bracket back on, the tensioner for the serpentine belt, the rotors and distributors, and the housing for the camshaft position sensors. I also managed to struggle the lower coil back in. It's quite a hassle because the bolt back there is quite hard to reach. A C pump is bolted back on. This bracket is still loose because I have to figure out the cable routing, and some of these covers are brittle. I want to repair that. I replaced this hose, and when I was in the process of doing that, I saw the hose running from the throttle body housing to the intake, the speed up intake is missing. So I have to find that, and I can't for the life of me figure out where I have left that. So, made a lot of progress in this episode. Kept my promise, the timing belt would go back in. Still have to remove the power steering pump, and that'll be something for a later episode. But anyway, got a busy day ahead tomorrow, so I call it quits for today. I have to do some cleaning up. Only thing left to say is I hope you liked watching this episode. If you did, give me a like. And if you want to follow me in future episodes, please subscribe to the channel. And for now, I'll leave you with thanks for watching and bye bye.